Imagine you're driving down the highway after a long day, sipping cold gas station coffee, when a massive brand new pickup truck eases into your lane chrome grille, shining like it was polished by angels, suspension so high it could step over your student loans, and a price tag that looks more like a mortgage than a vehicle. And as it pulls ahead, that same thought hits you. The driver probably makes the same amount of money you do, maybe even less, yet somehow they're cruising around in a $70,000 machine that drinks gas like it's celebrating spring break. And you start wondering how normal Americans are pulling off these extreme car payments that keep popping up everywhere. If it feels like every driveway in America suddenly has a car worth more than the median household income, you're not wrong. The financial system around auto loans has transformed so dramatically over the last decade that affordability no longer means what it used to mean, and the dealerships know exactly how to exploit that shift. This isn't just about cars, it's about debt, psychology, lifestyle, inflation, negative equity traps, and the way financial stress gets disguised as treat yourself, culture, where monthly payments matter more than the total cost, and where the average American is being encouraged to finance vehicles the same way people used to finance houses. And while you're stuck wondering how your neighbor can afford a luxury truck while still complaining about grocery prices, the uncomfortable truth is that millions of people aren't actually affording these cars at all. They're stitching together long loan terms, rolling debt forward, refinancing losses, and restructuring their entire budgets around a vehicle payment that quietly consumes 20 to 30% of their take-home pay. It's become normal, almost expected, for people to take out 6-year, 7-year, even 8-year auto loans just to make the monthly payment look reasonable, even though the total cost balloons into something financially dangerous. And because this strategy works in the short term, it creates the illusion that everyone is wealthier than they actually are. The real story is that America's auto financing ecosystem has turned into a quiet financial trap where lenders, dealerships, and marketing psychology work together to convince regular workers, teachers, nurses, mechanics, retail staff that a $1,000 monthly car payment is simply part of modern life, even when their income says otherwise. And if you're not paying attention, you can fall into the same system without realizing it, because this entire machine is designed to make extreme payments feel normal, even when they're anything but. Before we talk about why people keep falling into these monster-sized car loans, you need to understand just how wild the numbers have become in the United States, because the average new car payment today has pushed into territory that your grandparents would swear was a typo. We're talking about monthly payments over $700. And that's not for luxury vehicles or some exotic track-ready toy. That's the everyday, middle-of-the-road American car sitting in millions of driveways. When you step into the world of trucks and SUVs, the numbers jump into $900 to $1,200 a month without blinking, which means a lot of households are committing more money to their car payment than to their rent or mortgage. And yet people keep signing for these loans like they're grabbing a $4.99 value meal. The wildest part? These buyers aren't high-earning tech workers or crypto lottery winners. They're regular people earning regular wages. Families juggling groceries, daycare costs, insurance, rising rent, and somehow convincing themselves that dropping nearly $1,000 a month on a depreciating asset makes perfect sense. And it's not because they're reckless or irresponsible. It's because the auto industry has spent the last decade engineering a system where affordability is no longer measured by the price of the car, but by how small they can make the monthly payment look, stretching loans out to 6, 7, even 8 years, reshaping psychological expectations so buyers stop asking, "What does this vehicle cost?" and start asking, "Can I survive this monthly hit?" The game has shifted from selling transportation to selling payment illusions, where dealers highlight the monthly number like it's the only metric that matters, burying buyers in long-term obligations that lock them into financial commitments that outlast jobs, relationships, and sometimes even the vehicle itself. The truth is, people aren't affording these cars, they're extending debt further into the future, stacking interest on top of interest, and building their lives around a payment that will slowly suffocate their finances over time, which is exactly how the auto financing machine wants it. And once you understand that this isn't a coincidence, But a carefully engineered system built to make financially dangerous decisions look normal, the rest of the puzzle begins to fall into place. Now, here's where the whole thing takes a sharp turn from big payments into big traps. Because the reason people are able to drive off the lot in $70,000 trucks isn't just because loan terms got longer. It's because the auto industry turned financing into a financial maze, so confusing that even people who budget religiously get lost in it. The most powerful trick in that maze? Loan terms so long they outlive the excitement of the new car smell. A car loan used to be 3 years, maybe 4, if you were stretching it now. 6, 7, even 8-year loans are the default option. And some lenders are quietly pushing 10-year loans, like it's a normal idea to make payments on a truck longer than some people stay married. And here's the psychological manipulation behind it. The dealership doesn't sell you the car, they sell you the payment. They'll keep asking, what monthly number feels comfortable? And buyers fall right into the trap. Because the moment the salesperson stretches that payment across enough years, the truck that should cost $1,500 a month gets sliced down to $9 to $100, and suddenly it feels affordable. But that comfort is an illusion. The buyer doesn't realize that stretching the loan means paying thousands more in interest and locking themselves into a depreciating asset that loses value faster than they can pay it down. By year 4 or 5 of an 8-year loan, they're not building equity, they're sinking deeper into negative equity, owing more than the truck is worth, trapped in a financial quicksand with no way out except taking that debt and rolling it into the next vehicle, which is exactly what most people do. They trade in early, the dealer wraps their leftover debt into a bigger loan, and the cycle restarts. But this time, the payment is even higher, the term is even longer, and they're now financing a truck they don't own and a truck they no longer drive. This cycle turns car buyers into long-term revenue machines, feeding the dealership and the lender with interest payments while the buyer keeps slipping further behind financially, convinced they're upgrading, when in reality they're just refinancing their past mistakes. This is why the system works so perfectly. People don't see the trap because it's disguised as convenience, flexibility, and affordable monthly payments, when in reality, it's nothing more than a slow, quiet, perfectly legal form of wealth extraction. But loan terms are only half of the story because the real financial chaos begins when people try to escape the payments they never should have taken on in the first place. Picture this. Someone buys a brand new truck with a 7-year loan, they drive it for 3 years, get bored, want something newer, nicer, bigger. And suddenly they're staring at a problem nobody warned them about. Their truck is worth way less than what they still owe. Most people panic at this moment, and the dealership knows exactly what to do. Don't worry, we'll roll the difference into your next loan. And boom, the trap snaps shut. Instead of walking away from the mistake, they carry the old debt into the new car, like financial carry-on luggage they can't get rid of. That negative equity doesn't disappear, it just gets glued onto the next truck's price tag, turning a $55,000 vehicle into a $70,000 liability before they even leave the lot. And from the buyer's perspective, it feels painless. No cash out of pocket, no uncomfortable conversations, no hard questions about affordability. But underneath the surface, something dangerous is happening. That person is now paying interest on a truck they don't even own anymore, plus interest on the new one. It's the financial equivalent of paying for 2 apartments while only living in one. And here's what makes this cycle nearly impossible to break. Once you carry negative equity into a new loan, you start every new vehicle purchase in a deeper hole than the last one. The next time you trade in, the gap is bigger. The next loan has to stretch longer. The next payment has to climb higher. You become a permanent customer, not because you love cars, but because you're financially trapped inside them. This is how ordinary Americans accidentally chain themselves to decades of auto debt without realizing what happened. They go from one shiny upgrade to the next, thinking they're leveling up, when really they're just refinancing the same mistake over and over like a financial Groundhog Day. And the wild part, nobody teaches this. Not in school, not at work, not anywhere. The dealership isn't going to tell you you're locking yourself into a long-term debt spiral. The lender isn't going to warn you that this is how people destroy their financial futures. And your neighbors won't admit they're drowning, they'll just smile in their driveway next to a truck they technically don't own yet and pretend everything is fine. But the real financial damage doesn't happen in the dealership, it happens at home, long after the excitement wears off. Because once someone locks themselves into a massive truck or SUV payment, their entire lifestyle has to start bending around that decision. And this is where the financial gymnastics begin. People who wouldn't dream of spending $1,200 a month on anything else will suddenly reorganize their entire lives just to keep up with a car payment. They'll downsize apartments, stay with roommates longer than planned, cut groceries to the bone, and cancel every subscription they ever loved, all while driving to work in a truck that costs more than their annual salary. Others get even more creative. They take on second jobs or side hustles specifically to pay for the vehicle itself. You'll see someone delivering DoorDash in a $70,000 pickup just to earn enough money to cover the payment on that same $70,000 pickup. It's transportation, inception. Your car becomes both the reason you're broke and the tool you use to stay afloat. And when the monthly squeeze gets too tight, people start digging into things they should never touch. They borrow from their 401k to make a down payment. They take personal loans to fix repairs. They shuffle insurance, fuel, and maintenance costs onto high-interest credit cards just to keep the monthly car note from bouncing. Every solution creates a bigger problem. Every shortcut adds more debt. Every swipe of a card pushes them further away from financial stability. And then comes the emotional trap, the part nobody ever admits out loud. Once someone has sacrificed this much for a vehicle, they become emotionally attached to the payment itself. They're financially drowning, but they'll defend the truck like it's part of their personality. Selling it feels like admitting defeat. Driving something reasonable feels like going backwards. So they cling to the payment, even when that payment is the very thing destroying their future. The car becomes a status symbol, a comfort blanket, a coping mechanism, and a financial anchor all at once. And this is how people stay stuck for years, losing tens of thousands of dollars to a vehicle that is worth less every single month. It's not just a bad financial decision, it's a lifestyle trap. And by the time most people realize how deep they've fallen, they're already planning the next upgrade. Which brings us to a part almost nobody calculates: the silent costs that quietly bleed your wallet dry. Here's the part of the story where everything finally comes together: the math that nobody runs, the reality nobody talks about, and the trap most Americans don't even realize they've walked into. Because once you layer on insurance, fuel, maintenance, and the brutal depreciation curve of modern vehicles, the numbers become almost unbelievable. Someone financing a $55,000 truck over 7 years thinks they're committing to an $800 payment, but that's just the entry fee. Add $200 plus for insurance, $300 plus for fuel, another $100 or more for maintenance, and suddenly this single vehicle quietly eats $1,000 to $1,500 every month from their budget. Over 7 years, that's more than $130,000 spent, all to end up with a truck worth maybe 15 grand. And because the payment is so huge, everything else in life gets squeezed. Vacations disappear, savings disappear, retirement contributions disappear. Even basic financial breathing room disappears. Meanwhile, the truck sits in the driveway looking shiny, while the owner looks stressed juggling bills, shifting due dates, and praying nothing expensive breaks. And here's the real plot twist. Most people do this not because they love cars, but because they've been conditioned to believe a vehicle represents success. Somewhere along the way, we replace financial stability with financial theater. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" people ask, "How impressive does it look?" And that mindset is exactly why so many households feel like they're drowning, even though their income hasn't changed. The good news, and yes, there is good news, is that you don't have to play this game. You don't have to match your neighbor's truck or chase the illusion of a lifestyle that does nothing but drain your future. The families who build wealth quietly are the ones who refuse to let a depreciating object dictate their financial destiny. They choose control over image, freedom over monthly payments, and long-term security over short-term ego boosts. And if you want to be in that group, the group that actually gets ahead, the first step is simply seeing the trap for what it is. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. You start thinking differently, spending differently, living differently. And that shift is what separates the people who stay stuck in the payment cycle from the people who finally break out of it. If this video helped you rethink the car payment culture we all grew up around, make sure to like the video, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me what topic you want broken down next.